Hello, and welcome to the CAP Today webinar for Wednesday, January 29th. I'm Bob McGonigal, the publisher of CAP Today, and I'll be your host, and I'll lead a live question and answer session with our speakers after our formal presentation. Our webinar today is entitled Adopting Artificial Intelligence, AI, Image Analysis for Clinical Use. How do we get there? Today's webinar is made possible by some financial support from Roche. We're very grateful for their help and their financial support. We want to acknowledge that and thank them. Now, for those of you who have excellent memories, as most of you I know do, today's webinar is a replay of a taped presentation we presented last year. That presentation had moments of technical glitches. It was so excellent in its substance that we decided that we would replay it for you now in the new year. And after that pre-recorded conversation goes by, we will go ahead and then have a live Q&A session with all the speakers joining us. And now if I can see some of the intro slides here, I think that might be nice in our feed. So you're seeing our webinar presenters, just to remind you again, are Dr. Marilyn Bowie of Moffitt Cancer Center, Dr. Savitri Krishnamurthy of MD Anderson in Houston, Dr. Patricia Raciti, she is with J&J Innovative Medicine, and finally, Dr. Sylvia Asa. Dr. Asa, of course, is a professor of pathology at University Hospitals and Case Western Reserve University. You see their disclosures there. I'll let you take those in for a moment, and then we'll move on. You'll see the objectives today have not changed. We want to identify the image analysis in helping you in your job every day and understanding the impact this is likely to have. It's much in the news, I don't need to say. And so with that, let's go ahead. We're going to run our tape, and then when that ends, all the presenters will join me live. You can type in your questions at any time, and we'll deal with as many as we possibly can in our time available today. So please, let's go ahead and roll the presentation.
Welcome. I'm Dr. Marilyn Bowie. It's a distinct pleasure for me to serve as the moderator for this fantastic panel. Let's welcome Dr. Sylvia Asa, Dr. Savitri Krishnamurthy, and Dr. Patricia Raciti. Hi, welcome. So is that okay if I just address everybody in your first name for the conversation's sake?
Of course.
Wonderful. Let's thank CAP and the Roche for this opportunity, and we'll just go directly into the questions that are on our minds. First, at your institution, what motivated your leadership to implement digital pathology and AI, and where are you in this process? We're going to start with Sylvia and Savitri, and then Patricia, and then me. All right, Sylvia, please take it away.
So thanks for letting me go first. I've got a great story to tell. This is my second time around implementing digital pathology. My first go was in Toronto, and we won't talk about that because that was a long time ago. But now I'm in Cleveland at the University Hospitals, and the motivation for this was actually interesting because it came more from radiology than from pathology. UH had the Sectra PACS system, and the breast group was a very active group. And I give big credit here to Hannah Gilmore, who was the head of AP at the time. She actually initiated the Sectra process for tumor boards using whole slide images. And when the institution saw the value that whole slide imaging can bring, they decided to go further with it. And Hannah was actually the leader. She recruited me to go to Cleveland to get us set up for digital pathology. At this point, we have full digital pathology implementation for more than half of the department. There are some subspecialties that are fully digital. There are some locations that are fully digital because we're a multi-site institution. So we're pretty far down the road. We don't have everybody fully digital yet, but we're getting there slowly but surely.
Sounds like you're almost there. And the drivers for adoption is the combination of diagnostic physicians that are radiologists and the pathologists. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, very good. And what's the like a return of investment driven your organization to do so?
So that's a really great question. The ROI for digital pathology is something that is initially, it appears to be daunting, but it's actually not that hard to figure out when you sit down with all the costs that are involved, especially in a multi-site institution with transportation of materials to pathologists who are located at different sites, in an educational environment, the teaching aspect of this, finding slides, moving slides, having residents involved, cutting slides for educational purposes. All of these things can be calculated. I want to point out that a number of vendors have ROI calculators that help you to do this kind of calculation. And the Digital Pathology Association has recently published a paper on this with a tool that's available on the website of the organization for all members. It allows you to go in and calculate for your organization based on your volumes and your setup what will be the ROI. It seems daunting to buy a lot of scanners and set up a PAC system at the beginning, and it is an initial layout, but it certainly pays back very quickly.
Yes, it sounded like the initial heavy investment eventually is going to pay off. And then there is actually a useful tool developed by Digital Pathology Association. If you're a member, you will be able to access it. And there is a committee actually help people to understand this tool and then the utility of this tool. And this is really great. And then what kind of AI application are you guys using in your institution?
So at the moment, we're only using two tools. We have a Ki67 counter and a mitosis counter. Both of these are part of the package that we have in our PAC system. I can tell you as somebody who does an awful lot of both of those, it's extremely useful. We've been looking at other AI tools, but we'll talk more about that, I think, later on in this session. So far, we haven't implemented any other AI algorithms.
Yeah, so this is great. Sylvia's story is showing that digital pathology right now is today's pathology because it has two huge functions. One is to connect all pathologists, no matter you're in what location, and then the digital pathology will facilitate the better workflow instead of shelving the slides between the hospitals, and the whole slide imaging will serve the purpose to connect us and also connect us with our clinical environment. So that means digital pathology, as a pathologist, we're no longer just behind our microscope inside our offices. We're speaking the same digital language like the rest of the digital health. So that's one function of digital pathology. The second one, that's the higher order for digital pathology, is to be able to give rise to image analysis and AI. We're going to talk about that more. Now we're going to go to Dr. Savitri Krishnamurthy, who is in a large cancer center, very often is the #1 cancer center in the country, and the research innovation is a key component of her practice. So let's hear her story. What's their driver for adoption? Who is doing adoption, and where are they on their digital pathology and AI journey? Savitri.
Thank you, Marilyn. I'm in MD Anderson Cancer Center. As Marilyn said, we are one of the largest and named as #1 even this year. But our digital story started very early. Ever since the first scanner became commercially available, our administrative leadership clearly saw the value of this new, perhaps one of the best revolutionary change that came to the whole field of pathology to be very important for the field. And as soon as the scanners were available commercially, we got them in MD Anderson, and we have been we have adopted that digital journey for all applications except for primary diagnosis. So even during COVID, when the facility was given to the pathologists, interestingly, people preferred to still use the microscope and not sign remotely using the digital modalities. But having said that, as I said, we have been using digital pathology for all applications that you can name off. And interestingly, for clinical adoption, we are in the forefront for telecytology, and very recently starting the adoption for frozen section, digital diagnosis because of the establishment of satellite centers away from the main center, and pathologists did not want to go there physically. But telecytology, we've been supporting many satellite centers for the last, I would say, 8 to 10 years. We are far ahead in telecytology journey. But with respect to primary diagnosis, there is a reluctance because I don't know. I think the administrative leadership who run these big plays are, I think, very astute in their evaluation of return of investment, particularly the financial advantages to running system. So I think when the system is running very well with showing digital pathology for all applications other than primary diagnosis, I think they are just waiting to see when the reimbursement and the monetary benefits to the institution will happen. And maybe we'll be very quick in rolling it if that happens. So I think they're waiting for that moment. And that is the reason why here in Anderson, also recently, they established the institutional data science for oncology with an effort to be on the forefront of the digital journey in the world with respect to cancer care, diagnosis, research, AI applications. So there is a lot of research going on with respect to digital pathology, artificial intelligence. And my own story here in MD Anderson, I'm the PI of the first trial that was done multi-institutional to show the benefit of digital pathology diagnosis for breast diseases in comparison to light microscopic examination called the Project Pink study sponsored by Perio. So this happened very early on, 2008, 2009, published in archives. So I think, we have everything here that I use. And also I have, as Marilyn said, a lot of innovative research going on in my lab with the AI related to prognosis prediction of particularly breast cancer. But there are other people doing tremendous AI research in my institution. But for the primary diagnosis, we have not yet adopted.
Very good. So Patricia, and you were in both the academic world before and now in industry, and you have this very unique perspective. And please tell us your story.
Sure, Marilyn. Thanks again for inviting me. It's so interesting. I'm now in industry at a pharmaceutical company, but so much of what Sylvia and Savitri said resonates with our experience. So I joined about 2 years ago, and the company was already digital. So I can't say I was played a role in the digitization, but the rationale behind it certainly is clear to me. And again, is very similar to what we've heard. Digitization of pathology slides, first and foremost, provided just a level of convenience for the pathologists reviewing the slides that cannot be replicated by moving glass, and allowed a level of collaboration between pathologists and scientists, and between pathologists and the data science team that, again, would not be possible on glass. The second reason digitization was so critical was because it just opens up the world of tools that can be done on slides, whether it be something as sophisticated as artificial intelligence to something equally sophisticated but perhaps less novel of just image analysis on immunohistochemically stained slides in terms of counting stained cells. And it really allowed us to generate a lot of data from images, quantitative data about responses of patients and any sort of research tissue to various drugs we were developing. And lastly, it is an investment in data. Digitizing our slides means all of a sudden we can connect and concatenate those digital images to outcome, treatment response to our drugs, potentially side effects, data about the microenvironment of certain tumors. That just allows much more scientific study to be done on tissue, opening the door for a lot of research opportunities for us. And so that really drove a lot of the decisions to adopt digital pathology as sort of a mainstay.
That's a great story. And now it's my turn to tell my side of the story. As you know, that I practice at Moffitt Cancer Center. Recently, you probably saw this LinkedIn posting. We are ranked the #1 in Florida and the southeastern United States. So this has been my professional home for 19 years. So when I first got here, we're already doing digital pathology from the clinic research side, because as Trish mentioned, that's for collaboration platform. You have a huge amount of data you can analyze, and you can use AI tools. So we have been doing that for 20 years. From the clinical side, so that's driven by mainly the pathologists and trying to convince the leadership that we're going to improve the efficiency of the workflow, especially as a new institution. We are popping up hospitals left and right, almost every couple of months. So now, as a pathologist, I'm working in 3 locations. So digital pathology become a necessity, especially doing frozen section, doing consultation. So we took our step into that direction already. So having like a whole slide imaging for primary diagnosis is already in our plan, and that's in line with the hospital digital health initiative. But because of the COVID-19, because of we are trying to change our hospital LIS system, so that is delayed. But I'm on a task force of our department for digital pathology implementation. So we anticipate that's going to take off very soon. So very good. Everybody has very unique story. As we said, we talk a lot about digital pathology connect us all. Now we're going to more focusing on what's the role of AI image analysis consist pathologists in their everyday workflow, and what kind of benefit would you see? So we'll start with Sylvia and go down the list.
So AI image analysis is a really important component of moving to the digital world. And for some people, it's kind of scary. And for others, it's actually the carrot that brings them to digital pathology. So as I said earlier, in my institution, we already are using Ki-67 counting, any nuclear algorithm, basically. And we're using mitosis counting. And these are both very tedious tasks that take a pathologist a long time if you're using a microscope. Whereas if you're using image analysis with some artificial intelligence to help you get things started, it takes no time at all. What's been an interesting thing for me to see is that, like any AI algorithm, it's never really perfect. And for me, one of the big important things is to be able to have an algorithm that you can manipulate a little bit. And I use the analogy when I talk to people that it's like using Siri on your phone. You can dictate a message and you're going to send it to somebody. Siri will get most of it right, but there's always the possibility that there's going to be an error in it. And it's nice to be able to fix that before you push the send button. And the same thing is true with the AI algorithms that are currently available for us. They're time saving. They reduce the boredom of tedious tasks for the pathologist. And in the end, I think they're probably more accurate, but there's always the need to be able to tweak things just a little bit. So far, that's been my experience. We don't have the fancy algorithms that go in and find things for you, like, you know, the prostate core is looking for the cancer foci or the lymph nodes looking for metastatic foci. I'm anxiously waiting for some of that to be implemented at our institution, because again, I think the most important benefit for us is that it reduces the time spent on tedious, boring tasks. So, you know, I think there's a huge opportunity for all of us here. Having seen just a little bit of it, I can tell you it saves me an enormous amount of time, and it does improve my accuracy.
Yeah. So Sylvia emphasized on the important role of using AI tool for quantification and improve the accuracy and the efficiency of pathologist work. And I have studied this topic and to summarize the AI algorithms generally into 5 categories. One is to find things, for example, locate metastatic disease in the lymph node. And everybody in the digital pathology AI world are familiar with the chameleon challenges organized by the Dutch group. And the AI algorithm was able to do equal or occasionally better than human in that task. So that's one, is to find things. The second is to classify things. For example, tumor has different histological types, and each type has a specific prognosis and treatment. And the tools, for example, to evaluate prostate cancer into different class, different type of grade. So that's another type of algorithm. The third one is quantification, as Sylvia said, because as a human, we are good in review things, but as far as calculating, we need help from machines. For example, calculator. If you go to a restaurant, you pay for the tip, everybody pull off their phone to calculate. And think about, for little things like that is not as important, you rely on a tool. But when we do quantification for biomarkers that will assign patients for expensive and toxic drugs, and we're eyeballing it, we're calculating in our brain, that just does not make sense. So quantification, definitely the computational pathology, the AIs will play an important role. So there are two other functions of AI. One is prognosis and one is prediction. So for example, I'm on a research grant, and we recently published a paper is to evaluate ductal carcinoma in situ. In our mind, there are two kinds of DCIS. One is aggressive one. They will become invasive tumor. We should treat them aggressively. The other type are very indolent. We should treat them conservatively. But how do we do this? So we use machine learning to evaluate our data set. We were able to identify the biomarkers by AI to predict which DCIS will be upgraded, then provide treatment. So that's like a predictive type of study. And also prediction, and there are already publications in those major cancers to study the histology by training the data with prognostic predictive clinical outcome information to just look at the histology to predict what kind of biomarker they will have, what kind of treatment response they may have. So these are all 5 major type of AI algorithms. And then I'm going to go to Dr. Krishnamurthy to see Savitri, if you have anything to add to these categories and from your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn. So I would necessarily echo what Dr. Sylvia Asa said regarding the utilization of AI image analysis-based evaluation of markers such as Ki67. So as I said, in my practice, we have not adopted digital pathology for primary diagnosis. But if I look into the role of image analysis for biomarkers, I think this has been around in our practice for a long time. Ki67 evaluation using image analysis is being utilized by pathologists. Our GI pathologists, I think, use it very, very consistently for their neuroendocrine tumors and, for estimation of Ki67. And me as a breast pathologist don't use it that much. So in my practice, like for image analysis, although ER, PR, HER2, Ki67 image analysis has been available, and we all know that there is added, more money that is paid if you did image analysis-based estimation. So it is a positive thing for any practice. Even with that kind of information, Ki67 has been routinely used. Now, so what is new about AI image analysis? So computational-based image analysis are obviously much better than the image analysis tools that has been available to the pathology field. And I think many private practices, I look at a lot of referral cases and I see consistently people are using ER, PR, HER2, Ki67 image analysis tools. So what is new for us? I feel computational image analysis, I have a lot of research going with HER2. So I think now the environment with the knowledge about HER2 low, HER2 ultra low, brought a kind of revisitation to the field of image analysis, because it became very clear that image analysis tools really brings inter-observer concordance to a better level, improves the precision, the accuracy of biomarker evaluation. So I think now all eyes are set on the availability of new AI-based image analysis tools in any practice to bring in this inter-observer concordance to a very good level. So I think, amongst the applications that we spoke of, even if a practice is not ready to bring in AI tools to help them kind of get their primary diagnosis done in a better way, I think everybody is more eager to bring in a well-validated, FDA-approved AI algorithm for biomarker estimation, be it HER2, be it Ki67, or be it PDL1. So in my view, I think there is a lot of interest, but as we speak, there are no FDA-approved AI algorithms that people can quickly bring in. But many labs have already adopted AI-based algorithm for biomarker evaluation. And all of us know for primary diagnosis, people are using a lot of AI-based for prostate, for breast, and metastasis detection tools are already commercially available. So I think the role of AI, computational-based image analysis for biomarker estimation is a great advantage. It is, I believe, like, I practice in a large setup where I have pathologists everywhere around me to take a second opinion for a biomarker, right? Like, is this really HER2 1 plus or is it HER2 ultra low? I can show it. But I think the AI tools are serving basically as your next best consultant. So if you really want to kind of get an opinion to fine tune what you are saying, I think these AI based algorithms will be very useful for people. And I certainly believe that they have a great role to come once they are totally validated and approved for use.
Very good. Trish, what's your thought?
I mean, it's a really interesting conversation, and I think, Marilyn, your 5 categories are incredible. I also try to think of AI in similar categories, and I think of tools that exist in the world as tools that can replicate what a human can do, and a human can check from a slide on our assistive. And then I think of tools, and this is the world I inhabit. Tools that really gather information from a slide that a human cannot, whether that be recreating an existing biomarker digitally, like Savitri mentioned, for instance, recreating HER2 low, rather than doing a molecular test to detect that, or an IHC or an ISH, doing that directly from an H&E, which I'm not able to do, and I don't think anybody can, or creating a new biomarker, a novel biomarker. Will a patient respond to this drug just based on this H&E analysis? And that world is a very exciting world. It has a lot of unknowns, but it has, I think, huge potential to transform care for patients. And that's where I live in the pharmaceutical industry, really developing and looking to develop these tools so that we can identify more patients that might be eligible for drugs based on a biomarker, and shortening that potentially time-consuming process that might be done molecularly, or creating novel biomarkers that can help us triage whether a patient might respond to a drug we're developing and should be given that drug, or if there's an alternative, better, less toxic, more effective therapy. And as I said, it's an area fraught with unknowns, but fraught with huge potential that we really want to harness. And it feels far away, but I think we'll be there sooner than we think, actually.
Well said. Uh, this is really, really true. When we talk about AI, most people will just say this is artificial intelligence. I don't like that term because that indicates it's a machine, a robot, reading behind the microscope is trying to duplicate what we're doing, potentially replace us. No, that's a bad concept. What I'm promoting is augmented intelligence, and we are using the assistance of this tool to empower pathologists to provide better information for clinical teams, for patient care, and also for scientific discovery. So for me, AI is a boost of energy for our profession who used to rely on a microscope. And now we have a better tool now. And also the AI type of algorithm will not replace pathologists. When we help to develop those programs, and these tools are well validated and they're meaningful, they're actually going to inspire us for future discovery, like Trish nicely described. So very good. So we touch upon a lot of great things about what AI can do and how do they impact on the patient outcomes and things like that. Now we're going to talk about how does the regulatory status and the reimbursement impact our decision of using AI image analysis clinically. So who'd like to take that question?
I'm happy to go first on that one, sure. So the regulatory aspect is one that I think is extremely concerning in the United States. And we've seen the reflection of that because I think a lot of these tools are being used outside the US more than in the US right now. And I say that with a word of caution because regulation is indeed very important and protects our patients, but sometimes it can also hurt them. So, you know, the whole issue of what's going on with LDTs in the US right now is something that a lot of people are afraid of. And I think that's holding back the implementation of both digital pathology and AI tools. Reimbursement is another side of the coin. And I think it's something that's, again, extremely important, whether you're in the US or not. Every implementation of a new tool has to show some degree of ROI. We talked about it simply for digital before. With AI, it's going to be even more important because these are very costly tools. I think for my institution, the reason that we haven't implemented any major AI is purely financial. We just don't have the money to do it. So it's going to be really important for pathology as we move forward to show the value added, to show the ROI. And it's also going to be important for the people developing these tools to place them in a way that they actually make financial sense. If there's specific reimbursement, that's great. If there isn't, it has to show the benefit by reducing pathologist time. There's got to be some ROI for all of these to actually be implemented in a real life situation.
Yeah, it's very true. Currently the FDA LDT ruling is something that the intention is good. However, the implementation is really damaging the practicing of pathology. And I know CAP is advocating for us. And the reimbursement is another issue. So with the CAP and effort, now there's this digital pathology codes to document the utility of digital pathology because they really don't have a dollar amount associated with it. So it's difficult for institutions to really put effort into it, but still we're trying to motivate everybody to please document, because in order for digital pathology code to be associated with dollar amount to get paid, we have to show popularity of utility, and it's in our everyday practice and essential and necessary for patient care. Then we'll be able to put dollar amount on it. So those are the two battles we're fighting on this front. But there are still people breaking through these barriers and find their ROI to invest on this very important technology. And Savitri, how about your thought on this?
I essentially agree to what Dr. Esa said. Very clearly, I think we are a little behind in this. I think the European world is far advanced with respect to application of digital pathology and artificial intelligence. And I think not getting paid for many of these things is a barrier right now. And I am part of the College of American Pathologists, you know, the Digital and Computational Pathology Committee. We have been discussing this for a long time as to how can we facilitate putting some money on the digital pathology work we do, trying to help CAP with giving examples of what is the extra benefit of using digital pathology compared to light microscopic diagnosis. So this discussion is very, I think, you know, it's an ongoing discussion, but unfortunately we are moving very slowly. And I think the fact that there is no reimbursement for the digital pathology work we do has been a big barrier for many practices for adopting digital pathology. So I think, like, you know, efforts are being made. So we have brought in the digital pathology utilization codes. But as we had a recent CAP webinar talking about problems of even putting the utilization codes into use very well. So leave alone bringing in the true category 1 codes to be paid for the technical charge. But a more important thing is we have not even thought about the professional charge for the pathologist for reading an image using digital modality. And recently, I also looked into detail into telecytology because we've been using digital for telecytology, and you don't get paid anything different if you did on-site, like, you know, in-person rapid assessment versus using a remote digital pathology modality. So I think, you know, as a pathology community, it is to our best interest to work together to facilitate these regulatory bodies to bring in the category 1 codes for not just the technical charge of using digital pathology and AI, but also a professional charge for reading the histopathologic slides or the ancillary immunostains by digital modality. Also, as somebody who is very well aware of the AI landscape that is emerging, that has emerged, and I myself have a lot of research with vendors and sponsors, I'm actually afraid that, the algorithms are being developed exponentially as I'm speaking for different applications, be it primary diagnosis, be it biomarker evaluation, or be it evaluation of prognosis prediction of tumors, or even prediction of biomarkers directly from H&E slides. There are so many vendors. But unless somebody pays and buys those software and uses them, how are they going to sustain themselves? But for the institutions, why would they keep buying additional software when there is no additional money that they are ever going to get? So the return on investment is actually not that great right now. That's what it looks like. But I believe that together as a community, the pathology community is obviously going to rise up to the occasion and facilitate this kind of regulatory bodies bringing in category 1 codes for adoption of digital pathology, and particularly the rapidly evolving AI algorithms that are coming for several applications in pathology.
Yes. As you said, even the pathology labs are the one using these tools. But from the driver's point of view, if it's something that the institution leadership is driving it, for example, at Ohio State or Mayo Clinic, even MSK, and things will move faster because as a pathologist, the budget is just that much. But if we're all trying to take from that little pie, there's just not enough money to do things like this. But if we expand the pie and with the institutional support, and then maybe with additional support from the reimbursement, so things will be totally different. So Trish, how does that impact on your world as far as this regulation and reimbursement?
Very much so. And I think it's something we are involved in and also keeping a close eye on because it really impacts adoption of all of these tools. I think both of these aspects of regulation and reimbursement are extremely challenging because they are so ever evolving, and trying to make plans now for what things will look like in 5 years is really impossible to try to future proof your plans. And you want to do that, but it costs money. So from the reimbursement point of view, it really at this point it seems to me an investment where anybody involved in digital really seems to be putting money in without necessarily seeing as much of the advantages as you could see coming out, especially from a return on investment in the absence of really reimbursement. And it's possible that this is really holding back adoption. I think that's what everybody certainly seems to be indicating, and it seems to be a real phenomenon. And hopefully when if and when reimbursement for digitization and then potentially one day for tools associated with digital slides, that will really hopefully open up the floodgates. I think regulation is another aspect that is really tricky because, again, it is really ever evolving. At Page, the first FDA approved assistive algorithm for prostate cancer detection, it was over 2 or 3 years ago, and still we have yet to see a lot of other companies break through, if at all, from a regulatory standpoint. And I think it speaks to the challenges, the bar that is set. I agree with Sylvia that it's really a fine line between sort of hampering innovation, but also protecting and making sure the tools are really safe to be used. I think there remains that balance has yet to be achieved exactly. And again, it just makes it very difficult to plan for the future when really so much is still unknown in terms of the regulatory bar for various categories of these tools. And so I think the main takeaway is really we're keeping a very close eye on it. And as pathologists, I think first and foremost, we really should speak up and have a say in all of this. And I think through work at the FCAP, which I'm also involved in through the Digital and Computational Pathology Committee, we really are having a part in it. I think it's crucial for our voice to be heard on all of these aspects.
Yes. And also regardless of those challenges and barriers, pathologists have to do what we have to do because pathology and the laboratory medicine is the foundation of precision medicine. And more than 90% of the clinical decisions made rely on the pathology report. So if we have those tools and the pathologist department have to find ways to incorporate them so we can improve our efficiency, accuracy, deliver the correct diagnosis, and provide the guidance to our clinical teams. So with that said, when our committee did a survey of digital pathology utility adoption, and the CAP did a leadership survey on digital pathology, and digital pathology adoption is really up. And also the AI utility is also up because we have no choice. We have to do this. This is our job. This is the responsibility of our profession to patients and our community. So with that said, if a clinical team is planning on AI adoption, what are the advices we're going to give it to them? So I'm going to start with the CAP has this publication, and that's a collaboration of the AI committee, DCPC, under the leadership of the Council on Pathology Informatics and Innovation. So that's CP. So there's this reference is recommendations for performance evaluation of machine learning in pathology, a concept paper from the CAP. So I would urge the hospitals and department to start with that. And then I'm also opening up to this panel to add on their advice and suggestions for the teams who is embarking on this journey. So we start with Patricia.
You know, this is not something that we've officially have to face in my industry, but I would say that I think that this is an excellent starting point to be able to at least begin to adopt these tools. How are they practically going to be used, and how are you going to evaluate them when they're really used on patient material? And again, I always come back to my mental framework, which is it an assistive tool or is it a sort of a standalone biomarker type tool? And I think keeping that framework in mind really helps guide how a clinical lab might start to think about bringing these on and at least verifying and validating whether these tools are appropriate to be used on that patient population in that setting. I also think, you know, all of the validation aside, and I don't want to take the conversation in a different direction, but I do think there has to be a level of comfort of the user. And that is something that also evolves with time. So even after you've validated and verified and brought on those tools, I mean, there is I say a learning curve. It's not a learning curve. It's more of a familiarity curve, a trust curve. And maybe trust is not even the right word, more of a vigilance. When am I going to be able to rely on this tool? When can I really sort of take control of this situation? And I think that's also something that happens in that validation and verification process that really shouldn't be underestimated.
Very good. Other comments?
Well, I can provide my comments to this question. So I think this publication, we were part of it, and it very clearly lays out the steps for any lab if they consider bringing in an AI tool. But personally, I think in any given practice, you have to take a step-by-step approach in the sense that the very first goal is building a great team of IT experts, informatics experts, and the domain expert, who is the pathologist, in understanding the need for any given practice of a given AI tool, right? That is the first thing, that decision has to be made. And then the second is, if we think very practically, people have to pay close attention to how the AI tool was built that they are considering for their practice, because the training and validation sets that any AI tool used is a reflection of how robust the tool is. So, you know, what are the kind of validation studies the algorithm was subject to before it came into the commercial arena for adoption by practices? I think very important. Then in any given practice in the digital era, I really think putting effort in creating great databases, that means cleaning up your database, you know, of whether it is routine clinical diagnostic kind of work or even any exploratory work, cleaning up, maintaining your data science part of your pathology department, which we never thought so well, right? Even when we talk about digital pathology, we just think we are going to digitalize our slides, we are going to use it. But there is lot more to everything, even like the quality of the digital images. So many vendors are coming up with tools that can detect artifacts to clean up your digital images before applying AI and things like that. So in my mind, that is important. And as the recommendation paper so beautifully lays out, verification validation is the term that is used when you want to consider AI. That means very robust validation of the tool, customized to your practice based on exactly how the tool was built, I think is very important. And in addition, I think a very great attention paid to consistent, ongoing QC, that is quality assurance, quality improvement kind of effort is very important in making sure that you are using the algorithm appropriately and that it is functioning appropriately, because this is not research, we are dealing with patient care kind of information. So I think a robust ongoing QA QI program once somebody adopts is very important. And one more thing is, consistent and very good training facilities to all the individuals involved in this process of digital pathology AI, in my mind, would be very important steps that any practice should take. So I think a step-by-step measured approach, making sure that the quality of the product is very important, that you don't hurt any patients, and the information that you generate, to me, is the most important. I do a lot of clinical practice, a lot of research. Research is something else. Clinical practice, I would say, pathology practices are new to this, right? We have been doing QA/QC for our traditional pathology practice. But in the digital era, there is a lot more to doing very good quality assurance and quality improvement. So we all have to learn to bring these into our practice.
Wonderful.
Can I just make one minor comment?
Yes.
Maybe this is just a reflection of my age, but I've been around long enough to see so many new technologies implemented in pathology. This is no different than anything else that we have done. And I always tell people that it's just like running immunohistochemistry labs. Every pathologist can relate to that. When you start a new immunostain, you have to know the specificity, the sensitivity, you have to know all of the technical requirements for the tissue that's being used to be able to see the antigenic epitope. All of the things that we've done in our previous lives apply exactly the same way to AI. And my big fear is that people are not aware of the need to ensure that we understand the limitations of this process. So I hope that from all the conversation we're having today and what's in this paper and our experiences with our colleagues, we all will learn that we have to understand the technology and understand its limitations as well as its applications.
Wonderful. Thank you for all those comments. And you're all obviously in the front of digital pathology and AI adoption, and you're the champion of it. And for pathologists, for individual pathologists, no matter if their institution is doing this or not, what is this one line, or maybe two lines, you would like to share with them? What do you tell our fellow pathologists about the digital pathology and AI? So let's think about it, and then please take it away.
Maybe I can go with this, Marilyn. So
Yeah,
one sentence that I would like to say is, as you know, we are great champions, as part of the College of American Pathologists Digital and Computational Pathology Committee. So if there is one sentence that I have to say, I would encourage pathology practices to consider adopting digital pathology so that they can reap the benefits of all the exciting new advantages that is coming with I would say, augmented intelligence tools that is coming our way. So reap the benefits. So be on the lookout and come into this journey so that you get all the benefits.
Wonderful. Next.
So I will agree with that entirely. Definitely go for it. I guess Nike just said, just do it, right? I've always felt that way about digital, and I feel the same way about the AI. But I think the most important thing is that people are very much afraid of this new technology. And a few people have made this statement, and I think it should be said at every session where we talk about digital pathology and AI, especially, is that, the AI, I would not be afraid that AI will take over pathology. But what people should be aware of is that pathologists who use AI will probably be more successful than pathologists who don't.
Well said. Trish?
Yeah, I could not agree more with all that was said. I think the the other thing I would just say to the group and to the audience is that it's hard to imagine what the future will be like with AI and the digitization and all that opens, but it is vast and huge and offers tremendous potential for patients to get access to treatments in different ways, to be diagnosed in different ways. And certainly vigilance is necessary, but we will definitely not offer patients those opportunities if we never digitize. That is guaranteed. And so it needs to be given a chance so that we can see all that it has to offer, I think.
Yeah, very well. So I agree with everyone. I feel like being a lifelong learner, continue to adopt emerging technology to benefit patient care is the hallmark of being a pathologist. So from that end, as an individual, I welcome everybody to check out the resources that the CEP has to offer. We talk about this white paper, and very soon on archives, there will be a series of special publication on generative AI and the pathology. And also a Digital Pathology Association has a series of white papers on the practice of digital pathology. American Society of Cytopathology has at least 3 papers on digital pathology and AI based on the task force and the national international survey. So there are a lot of resources out there, and for continued learning and the pathologists have access to this material, and also just the small and the special uh, plug on the Digital Computation Pathology Committee of the CAP that I'm the chair, Savitri is the vice chair, and the Trish is leading the resource guide, the subgroup. So we spend a lot of time and put out a lot of educational material there, including the webinars. So please check them out and let us know what else you need to prepare on this digital pathology and the AI journey to benefit patient care. So thank you very much for joining us for this conversation. I appreciate what you do for our patients. Thank you.
Now I want to thank Dr. Bowie in particular for moderating a wonderful session, which we've just reviewed in recordings. And I think now might be an appropriate time to bring us a bit up to date on some of the things that were mentioned. All 5 of the generative AI papers that are slated for the archives are now posted online. They've been largely publicized by members of API and DPA in addition to CAP. And for those of you who still enjoy reading a paper journal, they're in the 4 of the 5 will be in the February issue of Archives, which should go into the mailboxes sometime by the end of this week. At least that's what we're hoping for. As I listen to you all, I'm tempted to make my first question or first suggestion that you might have for the audience would be to don't worry about the illumination so much of your microscope lenses, but get yourself a very, very good reading lamp because there's lots and lots of material that's pouring forth in journals, online, and elsewhere. So, Dr. Asa, what are you doing to keep up with this avalanche of information, not only within pathology, but in medicine and society generally around AI and the things we need to bear in mind?
Oh, that's a great question, Bob. I'm going to disagree with you. I don't need a reading lamp. I need a stronger monitor or a better monitor on my computer and a bigger
Okay.
iPhone.
Okay.
I think we're constantly getting input from all kinds of places. I think the real trick nowadays is to, set yourself up with keywords in PubMed and on all the journal websites and in Google so that whenever a paper comes out on the subject, you get a notification about it. We can't keep up with everything, obviously, and I'm sure I miss articles. But every morning when I wake up and I look at my phone, I've got, a list of 10 papers to read. So I think that's the new way in the world, right? Get your notifications set properly and you'll know what's going on.
Thank you. Dr. Krishnamurthy, the same question to you. How would you advise colleagues to keep up and students to keep up?
I essentially would say the same thing that Dr. Asa said. I think you don't need the light, but I think you need a good computer to work with, and we are very busy. So wherever you are, whether at home or in office or you're traveling, you're constantly connecting, right? So having a good computer is very important. And how to keep up with everything? I think, these days you get the information whether you Google on a topic or you go into PubMed. So getting the notifications is a good way. That is the way I do too. And also I do a lot of research, right? So for me, it is always to be on the forefront. I have to be constantly doing a search and understanding who is doing what new thing has come. So it's basically keeping oneself motivated to learn more about our own field, I would say, is a very important way. And for me, sometimes when I'm very busy, it becomes hard, but I try to keep up with all that is of relevance for me as a breast pathologist, cytopathologist, and particularly anything related to these two fields is I make sure I read the new things.
Thank you very much. Dr. Raciti, now that you're in the R&D world, the world of pharmaceutical and drug development, it's very clear that digital pathology and AI will have their deepest impact there. There's already many highly trained people working in drug discovery. Clearly, the standardization that digital pathology allows and the hopefully standardization of interpretation that AI will continue to channel are really becoming absolutely essential for drug development. Could you share your observations about that side, an important side of pathology for our audience today?
Yeah, absolutely, Bob. I think, I think a lot of digital pathology in the clinical world focuses on tools that can be extremely helpful to pathologists who are diagnosing slides or performing any task on a slide, quantification, diagnosis, all the other aspects of diagnosis, grading. And I think in the drug development world, that is less of a focus, and it's more of a focus on how AI can see patterns in the tissue that potentially a pathologist cannot. And how those patterns can be used to either gain insight into a drug's efficacy, gain insight into the biology of a disease, whether that be survival or any other aspect, adverse events of the drug. And it holds a lot of promise, but it also comes with a whole new set of challenges because a human is not necessarily double checking any of the outputs of those AI devices. And so that's where we're hoping to take tools like this. But as I said, with these incredible opportunities come many more hurdles related to how we can implement these tools.
Thank you. I'm going to ask now Dr. Bowie to make some comments. I want to point out that Dr. Bowie served as the chair of the editorial board of CAP Today for full terms as the chair of the CAP Publications Committee. So we have a long-standing relationship and have worked together extensively for many years. Now that I get to ask the questions for a minute, Marilyn, what are some of your thoughts that you have today on January 29th, having reviewed the webinar that you put together for us so beautifully last year?
Well, I'm still learning. As I said, as a pathologist, being a lifelong learner, that's what we do. And how do we keep up? Continue to read the articles, as Sylvia said, continue to work on things you're interested, and then you learn from the process. And also continue to associate yourself with people equal or smarter than you, like this crowd. So one of my approach is to be active to service in pathology societies, like the College of American Pathologists, Digital Pathology Association. I think the panel here, we're all members of those associations. the great advantage is you learn from this large network. You get to learn from webinars like this. You get to ask to write papers, and then you may have some fundamental knowledge, but by writing, doing things, you learn a lot more. And also with a society like CAP, we have guidelines and guides. So associate yourself with people smarter than you. It's a great way. So I am so glad I'm associated with you guys. And then this today is the Lunar New Year for the year of snake. So Bob, you mentioned this is special to you. So this is the year of wisdom, intuition, and transformation. So
Yes.
we're going to continue to work together and transform the field.
Thank you. We certainly will. And I am born under the sign of the snake, which may surprise no one who knows me, or may be a surprise. I don't know for sure. But I'm very interested as we look here. There's a lot of interest right now in helping to define the difference between using DP and AI in primary diagnosis versus all the other uses which we have all racked up and discussed extensively since the very first introduction of digital pathology what is now many years ago. So let me just survey again. Dr. Asa, you mentioned that give us the status of primary diagnostics that's going through DP at your institution.
I think we're starting to see more and more uptake of digital pathology. As I said in my talk, I think we've been behind in the United States. Other countries moved ahead, and a lot of that was, I think, because of legislation and funding. But that's starting to change, as I said again, and I think others have pointed out, the ROI of digital pathology is enough that I think, the money is not really going to be the issue. I know a lot of people are still very concerned about legislation. There are some questions in the chat about FDA approved systems and so on. And a lot of what's being done is actually LDTs. But we are starting to see uptake, and I think we are also, most importantly, starting to appreciate that the new generation, the young people, the residents, the fellows, they really like digital pathology. I think they take to it much more quickly than many of the senior people do. It's always hard to adopt change. But I think that if we do things right, this next generation is just going to assume that pathology is digital pathology. As far as AI, I think there's a lot more, and I don't really want to address that now. I don't think that there's an awful lot of actual adoption of things other than some of the common counting and measuring tools because of the legislative issues around this. But again, even in the last year, there's been a huge increase just among the people that I know who are using these tools. So it's happening, and I suspect that the curve is going to start to become exponentially increased.
Thank you very much. Dr. Krishnamurthy, in the recording that you made last year that we just heard again, you mentioned there's not a lot of primary diagnosis going on yet at MD Anderson, but certainly the brain power there and the interest in there must be increasing almost by the week. Tell me where you stand today at the very end of January of 2025.
Thank you, Bob. So in my practice, I think we are inching very close to bringing digital pathology for primary diagnosis. I think it will happen very soon. We just got the Sectra as the main kind of system for our operations, both in radiology and pathology. So I think we are working towards bringing it, and I think it will come pretty quickly. And I would also envision that we will also be on the forefront for AI applications and other things when the time is very right. Because we have everything that is required to achieve success in that area too. But particularly for digital pathology adoption for primary diagnosis, I think we will get there pretty soon.
Thank you very much. Marilyn, the same question. Where are you today at Moffitt in terms of adoption for primary diagnosis?
We have this digital health initiative. So the institution is working with pathology together to evaluate vendors and officially embarking on this journey. So we will first to go through the digital transformation and then take step into incorporating AI. So when we talk about primary diagnosis, and used to be the definition is a pathologist examining tissue under a microscope to give a definitive diagnosis. So in the future, it's going to transform into final diagnosis solely made by reviewing digital slides without microscope. So then the algorithms used for this currently is the pathologist first review, the AI does assisted role, but very soon we're going to have AI algorithms are good enough to do the primary reading and the pathologist does the verification. And then the next step, the AI will get better. And then there are already a prostate tool to use current whole slide imaging to run algorithms trained on pathology, clinical correlation, and biomarkers to predict the prognosis and the treatment plan for the patients. So prostate has one already. So in the future, we're going to have these prognostic and predictive model. And then in the further future, we're even going to have algorithms that is autonomous. So the pathologist may not be in the loop. So these are the steps we're going to take. So we're currently have to do the digital pathology transformation first in order to get to the other steps. So we're at 0.0, but at least we started walking. So that's good.
That sounds wonderful. I'm gonna close with one more question for Dr. Krishnamurthy, and then I'd like to hear from you also, Dr. Bui. We're entering an era now of having drugs approved that are what we're calling pan-tumor approved drugs. The drugs approved for a variety of tumors, and yet the measurement of the biomarker in the individual cancers is still very much up in the air and needs resolution before those drugs can be used. We could devote a 2-hour webinar just to that single topic, and we have many times already in the past year. But I want to ask you with specific thought about digital pathology and AI, do you foresee in the future the application of these modalities to help solve some of those questions about treatment of cancer patients?
Thank you, Bob. That is indeed the direction that things will go. As you know, that particularly in the area of HER2, right, with the
Right.
drug, the Enhertu that is approved, FDA approved for all solid tumors with HER2 low and ultra low. So then the question comes that how are you going to measure? It is a common sense that, you know, biomarker evaluation by the pathologist under the light microscope is very subjective. So, you know, you don't want to deny a patient the hope of getting a potentially beneficial drug that improves their progression-free survival. So there is but no choice for us to rely on something that brings a better level of consistency and more confidence in selecting a given biomarker. So when there is no other alternate better modality to kind of get to selecting a given patient, you have to rely on whatever is available. And what is available now? Robust AI tools to bring that level of kind of inter-observer consistency. And as you know, I myself published very recently in JCO,
Right.
the first paper of AI for HER2 evaluation, which clearly showed that it is much better than just looking at, you know, the digital images without any AI aid. So I would say that whether it is PD-L1 that causes so much inter-observer variability between pathologists for checkpoint inhibitor therapy, or it is HER2 selection of HER2 low and ultra low status, I think these kind of AI tools would be our answer And I think as we move forward, the trick is in knowing which is the best AI model. That is where the problem is now. There are several people who have developed models, but then how do I know which one is good, which one is best that I should take, and which one is going to perform very well? How do I do the validation QA/QC? So that is where the field is right now. So there is no dearth of AI algorithms for anything. But
Okay.
how do I know which one is good? Which one should I take? Which one should I start using it? Those are all the questions that will be answered in the very near future.
Very good. I think with that, I'm going to give you the last word because we are right up against ending today's webinar and the questions and answers. I hope you've all enjoyed that in the audience. I've certainly enjoyed every minute of it. As I said, I think we could go on for 2 more hours without fail, and hopefully we'll get a chance to do that in the not so distant future. But with that, let me go ahead and wrap up today. I want to thank Dr. Marilyn Bowie, Dr. Patricia Raciti, Dr. Savitri Krishnamurthy, and of course, Dr. Sylvia Asa. You've been wonderful panelists and wonderful in this conversation and question and answer session. Of course, I want to thank Roche for their educational support in presenting this program to you. Roche, as you all know, a very big and very important player in our world, and we're always grateful for their support and want to acknowledge that. Finally, I want to take a minute and thank all of you who are joining us today on this webinar. I know how busy everyone is. There's just not enough hours in the day. The workloads are enormous. And I really appreciate it. We all appreciate it when you take time to join us in a CAP Today webinar. So with that, once again, a quick wrap up. Thanks to Dr. Bowie, Dr. Raciti, Dr. Krishnamurthy, Dr. Asa, thanks to Roche, and thanks to all of you. And with that, I'll bring today's webinar to a close. And I'm going to ask Dr. Asa to assist me today in asking some of the questions and fielding some of the comments that we see from our audience. And but I'm going to plant the first question here. I'd like to hear a quick response from all 4 panelists. Doctors, are you surprised that we have essentially boom and bust, particularly in terms of some of the attitudes around digital pathology? Many of us, as you know, have been in the field for many, many years, and there is a great sort of a hype and interest, and then it declines. I think that's just part, in my opinion, of bringing in important breakthrough technologies into the specialty field. But I'd be interested in what you would have to say about that. Let me ask you, Dr. Raciti.
Thanks, Bob. It's interesting. I've probably been in the field the least amount of time compared to my colleagues on the call, and I've experienced exactly what you have described in the brief amount of time. And I really think some of the boom has been because of the boom in AI in terms of the boom in digital pathology. And I think some of the bust could also be because of AI. A lot of excitement, but then as we learn more, we maybe raise up the guardrails, and then we think we can overcome things, and then we raise up the guardrails again. And there's so many drivers to all of this that it results in exactly what you've described.
Thank you very much. Dr. Krishnamurthy, could you answer the same question for me very briefly?
Thank you, Bob. And I would essentially agree with what Patricia is speaking. Like any disruptive technology that comes into any field, there will be a lot of issues and challenges. But any disruptive technology that brings in the needed benefits for a field, it is here to stay. So digital pathology is a disruptive but a very revolutionary kind of change for the field of pathology. And I think based on all the benefits that it will bring to the field of pathology, even the people who are very skeptical will be changing in the near future.
Thank you. Dr. Bowie, I'm going to ask you now to comment. I'll let Dr. Asa have the last word on this particular question. But clearly there's a lot of effort that goes into this, and I'm interested. You have long perspective here, Dr. Bowie. We're interested in your response as well.
Yes, I've been in this for more than 20 years now. I really do believe COVID-19 pandemic was a very strong accelerator for digital pathology and AI adoption. First, the profession of pathology and laboratory medicine was pushed in the front. We have to quickly develop COVID testing, and then all the diseases, the cancers, they don't wait for nothing. So the patient are still have to come to the hospital for care. Then the pathologist, if they cannot show up in the hospital, they have to do remote sign out. So the first function of digital pathology is to connect everybody. So then that accelerated remote sign out, FDA and government regulation loosen up, allow pathologists to do that for our patients. And continue building on that. The second accelerating factor is in the whole entire digital environment, the technology is advancing, and there's the AI, the natural language model, and also the storage is getting less expensive. So digital pathology is really booming and catching up, because when you talk about the AI algorithm, the radiologists, the cardiologists, dermatologists, they have like 400 some FDA approved algorithms. Pathology has 4 or 5. However, we are learning very fast. We're picking it up because, as I said before, pathology is the foundation of all healthcare. So all those accelerating factor is in advantage to digital pathology and AI adoption. So that's why I said we are in the business of adopting new technology. So pathology, in order for us to advance, we must adopt digital pathology and AI, which is the third revolution of our profession.
Thank you. Dr. Asa, could I get a brief comment from you to the question I posed generally, and then ask you to select a few choice questions or comments as you see fit?
Great. Thanks, Bob. I'm very happy to do that. I think one of the things that I've observed, because some of you may know I started my career in Canada, I have a lot of relationships outside the U.S., and now I'm working in the U.S. And I think, the difference in the quality and quantity of uptake of new technologies differs from place to place. And I think it's a reflection of need. In countries where there are not enough pathologists, where there is no funding system like in the U.S., people see somewhat more of a big picture approach. You can save money by using certain tools just because you can get more specimens processed quickly and get the answers out to patients who are waiting on the wards or in the OR, wherever it is. I think what we've seen in the rest of the world is more of a kind of a tortoise approach, where there's slow but steady uptake, and people actually are using digital pathology and slowly now adding in AI algorithms. In the U.S., we didn't see that. It was much more of the hare. People were not doing anything. They were taking their breaks, thinking they're going to catch up later. And when AI algorithms come in, all of a sudden there's some appetite. But I think, Marilyn's right. Pathology's been very slow compared to other types of medicine. We're a very conservative group of people, and yeah, we'll get there. It's just a matter of patience. If I can just go to some of the important questions that have been posted on the web, on the site here, there are multiple that kind of tie into one theme, and I'm going to just pose this as the first question that we should address. How are we going to mitigate risks that are associated with AI-based diagnostics? And there are questions asking things like, is CAP proposing a systematic workflow? Will we be required to validate AI before we implement it? Will CAP provide us with standards for proficiency testing? Who's going to be responsible for, the risk? Is it going to be CAP? Is it going to be the individual pathologist? Will it be the company? Will it be government? How are we going to address these? And I think they're all very important questions about risk.
So I'd like to ask Marilyn actually to answer that first, because I know she's on a committee that looks at all of this.
Thank you, Sylvia. I serve on the Digital Computation Pathology Committee as a chair. So I also report to the Council on Pathology and Informatics and Innovation. So as a CAP member, I can reassure you, CAP is putting a lot of talent, effort, and on this area, because this is really important for our practice. First, one of the major red flags associated with AI is the potential for bias. So what data set do you use, and how do you train them? What's the rule do you use to build those algorithms? They're all very important. So there are CAP published one paper. It's like a white paper. We don't call them a guideline paper because guideline paper use a different process. So this paper is published at Archives of Pathology and Laboratory Medicine in 2023 in December, and specifically recommending performance evaluation for machine learning in pathology. This is a concept paper on behalf of CAP. And if you do PubMed search, you can find other papers on preparing data for AI in pathology with a clinical grade performance. And also CAP website has how to validate AI algorithms in anatomic pathology. This is the great work done by the AI committee. So no matter how fancy AI are, they are just a tool. So if you're using AI tools in your clinical practice, you're signing out that report, you are responsible for that report. So it's in the pathologist and the laboratory's hands to validate, continue to do quality improvement on the algorithm you use to use that tool to deliver better patient care. Thank you, Sylvia.
Wonderful. Thanks, Marilyn. I have a very practical question, which I'd like to ask Trish to address. And that is, if you're using AI on scanned images, how do you assure the quality of your actual scans? Are there algorithms that can automatically assess the quality of the scan so that you can cut down on the number of FTEs and time that it takes to do this the old way?
Yeah, Sylvia, this is a great question. And I think recently there have been a number of tools that assess, quote, quality of the slide. And that can be anything from pre-analytic, pre-scan quality, to stain quality, to actual scan quality. And I think there's a long way to go with those tools. I would argue that many of those tools are not entirely sufficient. If you're scanning a very fatty piece of tissue, no AI tool will tell you that the scanner did not pick up the fat on the digitized scan. But nevertheless, there are AI tools that can actually provide a lot of value to assess the quality of the tissue and the quality of the scan. And I do think, again, they have a little bit of a ways to go because they do not necessarily sort of subclassify the type of quality issue such that it's really up to the lab to decide if a slide has, quote, poor quality based on an AI. Does that mean that the tissue needs to be re-embedded? Does that mean the cover slip needs to be put on? Or does that mean just the scanner was out of focus? And so the tools really are a guide, but very importantly, there still obviously needs to be a human checking all of those scans. And then the last thing I just want to communicate to the audience and everyone, and to your point, which is what is quality for a human to be able to review a slide might be a very different level of quality of what an AI requires to put an output. And that's a little bit, it's certainly important in AI assistive tools, but it's especially important in tools, AI tools that are expected to be standalone biomarkers, where the AI is supposed to give an output that no human can check. And that's where slide quality really almost factors into performance evaluation of that AI, meaning at what point does the performance of that AI actually drop below a certain level of slide quality? And I think that's something that really is uncharted territory, in my opinion, but really needs to be further investigated.
Thank you very much. Savitri, I have a couple of questions that I think you can help us with, and they are mostly regarding AI assessment of IHC and other specialty stains. We talked a lot about Ki-67, I think, in our discussion, but people are also interested to know what other algorithms are out there for immuno, which ones have you implemented at your institution? Maybe you can tell us a little bit of what you know about what's going on elsewhere.
Thank you, Sylvia. I can certainly answer that. I think when we were discussing the Ki-67 and other algorithms are not computational AI-based algorithms that are being used, even in my institution. So as everybody knows, there are different vendors who have come up with computational AI-based algorithms for biomarker assessment. And I think because of the interest in HER2 low evaluation and the need for bringing in inter-observer concordance and precision, in the last 2 or 3 years, there has been a real kind of interest in that area. And as far as I know, none of the algorithms are FDA approved, but yet many of them are being used by large labs. In my institution, we have not implemented any AI-based algorithm or a computational image analysis-based evaluation for biomarkers. But I think I have been involved in a lot of research for HER2. And as you know that some of the algorithms do perform very well, and at least the one that I have been involved in is in the process of going to the FDA. But as of now, they are all very much investigational, not very much ready for prime time use.
Thank you. I have another interesting question, and I'm going to open this to whoever wants to answer it. AI algorithms, many of them keep changing. They're supposed to improve after the initial release. With use, they get better. What's the regulatory hurdle from the FDA for people who are using these? Do you have to buy something and use it as a locked algorithm? What happens if it gets updated, and how do you manage to use those updates so that you can keep tracking changes and improvements in the algorithms? Marilyn, do you want to try and tackle that one?
Yes. So this is the topic that the Digital Pathology Association is really care about, because currently most of the algorithms approved by the FDA are all locked down. However, there may be change in certain parameters. So currently the rule of thumb is if it's a minor change, you document, you submit it. But if it's a major change, and it depends on how major that is, the regulatory pathway is very different. So this is from the industry side. From the pathologist perspective, when you have a product, no matter it's locked down or it's not, it's your responsibility to continue monitor your AI algorithm. There are CAP is developing tools to help people evaluating AI algorithms and to continue monitoring it. So please stay tuned and follow up on what's new for the pathology community. Thank you.
Thank you. There are a couple of questions in the chat. People are asking about, they joined late and may have missed some of it, or they're asking for further information. Just to reiterate, this will be available on the CAP website. I think some of the references that Dr. Bowie was mentioning can certainly be added to the website so that you'll get access to those. I think there is one more question, which I will just address briefly, and that is about the importance of the infrastructure that is required for IT and image management software and so on for successful digital pathology. I think this comes back to something we've had in the discussion, and it was mentioned a few times in the talks, about the critical importance of having institutional support for any initiative to implement digital, AI, any of the new technologies. There has to be a recognition by the institution that it's more than just a departmental initiative. It's something that affects everybody in the environment. IT infrastructure is something that you simply cannot go live with unless you've got your IT departments supporting you. And I can tell you this is something as simple as having fixed IP addresses for certain pieces of equipment, which is often not the case. I've had experience with this where, the institution has a policy about IP addresses and it applies everywhere, and then all of a sudden your scanner doesn't work and you don't know why. Image management, you need to have a good image management software. You need to have a PAC system. You need to be planning for archiving and storing the important images that we generate in pathology. One of the saddest experiences I've had is watching institutions go live with digital. No one plans for this. They go on for a couple of years, and then suddenly somebody realizes there's no more space, and they delete everything that's more than a certain age. And that just defeats so much of the value of having a digital archive. So we have to be more attentive and plan how we're going to be doing things to get the best value, the best bang for our buck. And we need to be working with people who understand how you can archive in, cold, warm, and hot storage levels and all of those complicated things that pathologists don't always think about. I think those are the important questions, Bob. So I think I will turn it back to you now.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Hayes. And as always, I love working with you, and I appreciate your pinch hitting for me today with this question and answer. I want to let the audience know that we will give you a very easy to follow, fluid presentation when we post in about a week or so. I also want to tell you all that I plan to do a replay with this same panel in some kind of a session, which I think because it's so rich, we've barely touched the surface in so many ways. But now it's really time to wrap up, and I want to start by thanking Dr. Marilyn Bowie, Dr. Savitri Krishnamurthy, Dr. Patricia Raciti, and of course, Dr. Sylvia Asa. These are four of the leading luminaries in this field, and we're particularly grateful to have them with us today. I want to thank Roche. They've done an extraordinary job in this entire field for a long time, and we're very grateful for their financial support in helping us bring you this program. Finally, I want to thank all of you. Not only have you taken your time today, but you've shown enormous patience with us, and I appreciate both factors. And we will be coming back to you soon with more programming around this. So watch this space. So with that, let me just once more thank Dr. Bowie, Dr. Krishnamurthy, Dr. Raciti, Dr. Asa, Roche, and all of you in the audience. And with that, I'm going to bring today's webinar to a close.